Seriously? Again? Did you know that Jasmy recently, about a week ago, got listed on a new exchange? I'll talk about that in today's video, what I think the impact could be, my perspective, and just what I think about it overall, even though nothing I say is financial advice, and even though I am not telling anyone to do anything. But Jasmy recently got listed on a place called IDE. It's spelled like literally like EYE, like, I, but with a D at the back. So it's like IDE, if that makes sense. Like I plus D, I'd. I have literally never heard about that ever. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, that sounded somewhat interesting. So I thought this was a cool thing. Now, granted, people like to say this is not even that popular. And hypothetically, that may be true. But at the same time, it's the small steps that counts, right? Eventually, it adds up later on moving forward. It's like, for instance, people sometimes like to tell me that, oh, new listings don't really matter. Well, they kind of do. Take a look at Ethereum, Dogecoin, Solana. Take a look at what good listings did to them, especially back in 2021. It did absolute wonders for them. Now, was it the end all be all? No, not necessarily. I mean, they were already pretty amazing projects in terms of the community and whatnot. It just had to wait for a hypothetical altcoin season. But at the same time as well, it needed the listings too. It's not like it could have done all of that without any good listings. Maybe it would have still done pretty okay, but not probably to those heights that they reached in 2021 without good listings, right? So listings do matter. Now again, Jasmy's not listed on the best places out there, and clearly its recent listing isn't anything to brag home about. It's nothing that's going to blow my hair back, but at the same time, it's still a small victory at the end of the day. And in 2026, Jasmy's been taking a lot of L's lately, right? A lot of people like to say that the price isn't doing the best. It's now around 10 times lower than back in December of 2024. They say that, oh, Janction, the incubation project under Jasmy, which is a layer 2, they say that's not doing too good, even though that's focused on AI. They say that the Jasmy chain has not much activity going on when it comes to it. And I can get those arguments, but at the same time, despite all those L's, so to speak, a recent listing, it's not too bad. At least it's a W, May not be the biggest out there, but not bad. So when people like to tell me, oh, Jasmy's really cooked and all this, not necessarily, right? I mean, sure, the price went down, but the fundamentals are still there. It's still focused on data storage, primarily speaking. That's its bread and butter. And still focus on that. Not many projects out there are focused on that. So it's pretty cool that it's focused on data storage. Now, people like to tell me, yeah, but that's very niche. That's very limited. I kind of agree with that because data storage, it's not such a cool or, I guess, trendy market. We've seen in the past, have attention, but it's not really so dynamic usually. But that's where something like Janction does step in because, again, Janction is focused on AI, and we do know that AI, it's a big thing as of right now. It's a big narrative, especially when it comes to stocks. Not really when it comes to this space, but what happens if it does? What happens if that kind of attention rolls in over to this space? Something like Janction is waiting right there. It may never be the best, but at least it's waiting right there. And Jasmy, the way you take a look at it is that it kind of has two pathways, right? Through Janction, it's focused on AI, but if that kind of doesn't really work out for it, there's still data storage right there. They still have data storage in their toolbox, so to speak. It's their bread and butter anyways, like I mentioned before. So Jasmy has these pathways, in my opinion. There's an option A, there's an option B. I don't find it to be a bad thing. Now, people like to tell me as well that when it comes to data storage, they say that this is kind of an outdated market. But if they say that, that means they're, saying that Filecoin, Rwave, Siacoin, and something called Storj is all outdated? A lot of people would highly disagree with that. So yeah, it may not be the coolest or most interesting niche out there, but at least Jasmy is top 2, arguably, in terms of popularity. I think it's more popular than Rweave. I think it's more popular than Storj, Siacoin. It may never be as popular as Filecoin, but at least it's arguably number 2 within that niche. And again, through Janction, it's focused on AI, so I don't find it to be a bad thing. That's why, again, they also have Janction, right? As an incubation project, it's a layer 2, and that's focused on AI. So I do like this overall when it comes to Jasmy. And not to mention, people oftentimes like to tell me that, Jasmy having compliance in Japan and all this, they sometimes like to say that it doesn't really matter. But I think it arguably does, because during an altcoin season, people care about stuff like this. It may not matter as of right now, but it could matter later on. I've used this analogy before, but I think it's a pretty good analogy, so I'm going to use it again. But if you take a look at, let's say in the case of Jeff Bezos, like 35 years ago, who was caring about what he was doing? I mean, I'm pretty sure some people were, but it's not in the level in which it is right now. People usually, I've noticed, they only care about something after, something has already happened. Like, in which case, after Amazon really made it big, then suddenly people cared a lot about Jeff Bezos. But maybe 35 years ago, no one really cared about him that much. So again, the way you take a look at it, yeah, sure, Jasmy having legal compliance in Japan, being really focused on data storage, having Jangshin as an incubation project under it, and that being focused on AI, all that type of stuff right there may not really matter right now, but it could matter a lot later on if the market were to take off. However, some people might ask me, how would you know if the market could ever take off? Now, I'll never be able to know, but historically, what I've noticed is that bear markets, they're typically not permanent. Like, we have not seen a permanent bear market ever when it comes to this space. Who knows if there could be one, maybe if everyone stopped believing this permanently. We never know, right? But at the same time, historically, I've just never seen a permanent bear market. So, yeah, sure, the market can be doing bad, but usually as time goes on, things hypothetically can recover. They could also go down, but typically things don't go up forever, but they also don't go down forever either. But I don't mind waiting though. I mean, if I'm entering into this space and caring about things only on a weekly basis, on a day-to-day basis, then I'd get tired pretty quick, because then I'd be upset, I'd be angry, then I'd leave. But because my mindset is years anyways, it doesn't really upset me in terms of having to wait and all this, because I expected that this could be a long journey to begin with. It's like, for instance, if I'm trying to run a sprint and then turns out it's a marathon, then I'd be upset. But if I'm trying to run a marathon and turns out it's a sprint, then I'd also be upset. So I kind of have to know what I'm getting into. So I'm not so upset or angry over waiting. That's just not me. As of right now, I'm more so content with waiting, because I expected to do that anyways. And if we think about Jasmy, people like to say, but it's around 10 times lower than December 2024. Like, that is really bad. Yes, in theory, that is true, because when something goes down by that much, basically 10 times lower approximately than where it once was, slightly over a year ago, yeah, I can get why that's bad. But in terms of lowering down my average cost, in terms of acquiring when things are hypothetically low, when I consider those criterias, I don't find it to be such a bad thing, actually. Because it's like, for instance, if I want to buy a bicycle or a hat, or let's say jeans or shoes or whatever, I would be happier if there was a discount. It doesn't mean there's always going to be one, but I'd be happier if there was one. So again, if I take a look at, let's say, me dollar cost averaging right now, and if maybe Jasmy could ever return back to December of 2024 levels, if I take a look back from that moment to maybe right now, I wouldn't complain, right? I'd be like, oh wow, I can't believe that it was once that low. So again, the way you take a look at it is that I put myself in a frame of mind where if things ever recover, would I be upset that I dollar cost average right now at these times? And if the answer is no, then I see no reason to be upset. Now, granted, people like to say, what happens if you dollar cost average, but things go down like 20 or 30% or whatever the case may be? I'm totally aware of that. But in the grand scheme of things, if let's say Jasmy goes down like 50% lower from where it is as of right now, okay, maybe in the short to medium term, it may seem like a bad thing. But if Jasmy could return back to December 2024 levels, in which case at that point it was around 6 cents, if it could go back to that, it's like to the point where the slight differences that I see right now, it's going to be negligible over the long haul. Let me just give an example. It's like, for instance, Bitcoin as of right now, it's around 60 grand. It's not looking that good. However, in instances where people cared about Bitcoin, like let's say back when it was $200 or $400 or $600 or whatever, over the long run, that difference right there, even though it seemed like a massive difference at the time, like, 600 compared to 200 is a big difference a long time ago. But over time now, because Bitcoin is 60 grand, that $200 to $600 difference back then, it's now negligible. It now doesn't really matter anymore, because Bitcoin has already done, hypothetically, all of that, right? To the point where those minor differences back then didn't really matter too much anymore, because now it's done so hypothetically well when compared to before, despite the pullback. So when I take a look at Jasmy again, if it could go back to December 2024 levels, I wouldn't be upset if, let's say, a dollar cost average currently and it went down another 30-40% or whatever, because, over the long haul, I don't think it mattered too much to me anyways. And also on top of that, I'm dollar cost averaging once a month. So yeah, sure, maybe I might dollar cost average up here in a certain month, but then the next month it may be down here. The other month it may be somewhere in between. However, over the long haul, it kind of just averages itself out. So I'm not concerned because I have a multi-year mindset anyways. And I'm treating this like a marathon. It's not a sprint to me. But nonetheless, seeing Jasmy be listed on a new place, I thought it was pretty cool. May not be the most popular exchange out there, but I still think it's a pretty good victory nonetheless, and I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward, and I hope you all have a very nice day. I'm out. Peace. Bye.